we are in motion. Back at you again. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, good something when you watch this. My name is State Senator James Sanders Jr., and it's time to be clear. In fact, the show is called Let's Be Clear. On this show, we deal with substance, not fluff. We cut through foolish talk. This is a day and age where you can't get a straight answer to a straight question. Everybody is moving all around the world and bouncing stuff, but no, not on this show. On this show, we tackle the hardest issues that the world is seeing. And this issue is no exception. The issue is what to do in the age of COVID with small landlords. What do we do? What is happening to them? And what, if anything, should we do about it? Now, I have brought some of the best people that money cannot buy to together on this show. And we are going to hear from them. And I have announced an initiative where we are working with small landlords, but I'm going to let Miss McLean, Miss Kimberley McLean, Esquire. Oh, I like that one. I got to get one of them for my name. And she, of course, is the staff attorney and foreclosure service manager at NHS of Jamaica. And incidentally, she went through blood, sweat, and tears. You just can't buy that Esquire. You got to go through blood, sweat, and tears. You got to earn it, my friends. And however, I have not. But I turn this over to you, Ms. McLean. What's going on with these small landlords, and what, if anything, should happen with them? And what is your organization?
Okay, good afternoon, Senator Saunders. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. This evening could be a morning if you're listening tomorrow morning. That's fine too. But Neighborhood Housing Services of Jamaica has been in the community since 1974. I say it's the best kept secret in Queens because a lot of people will say, what is that? Where are you? But housing is our middle name. So every time you think of anything related to your house, I want you to contact us so we can help you to navigate that process. So if you're a renter, you're a landlord, you're a homeowner, doing repairs, wanting to know what to buy for your house, we'll give you guidance on that too. Wanting to decide if you should get more credit, a credit card from Home Depot, for instance, reach out to us. Let's talk through it because there are things that impact you in different ways that you don't know. So check with us. We've probably seen it. We've seen the impact of certain transactions, and we like to prevent scams whatever way we can. And when the more we know and we hear from the constituents, the more we can guide. So you help us, we help you. We like to share information. As for this program that the senator has brainstormed and launched, we had our press conference earlier today, and it's a wonderful program because you hear of the program for tenants, the Ewrap, the Emergency Rental Assistance Program. And then what about the landlords? What are we doing for landlords? And the senator has responded by coming with this program where we'll have a clinic on Tuesdays. I think it's not every Tuesday, but we'll have a list of Tuesdays and we'll advertise ahead of time because his communication team is magnificent. They create flyers, they do blog posts, they're ready when you say we are ready to go. So we'll schedule ahead of time. We'll have a half an hour slot where you can get on the line. It's going to be by Zoom or telephone because you know you can use Zoom by phone. And you call in, we hear your issue, and we guide you. Landlords are coming against tenants who have not paid rent for the past 15 months, 16 months at this point, and they don't know what to do. How are they going to regain that? If you can't pay the first month, chances are you can't pay the second month, the third month, and it puts the landlord, who most times the people we're working with are two family at max landlord. The unit they live in as their primary residence and a unit for a tenant. And then when they can't get the rent from the tenant, because remember now, when they bought the house, the bank factored in rent as income stream and a source of income to qualify for that mortgage. So they're counting on the landlord being able to collect from the tenant. None of us planned for COVID. We were not prepared for COVID all through society. The economy wasn't ready. The healthcare system wasn't ready. And believe it, the landlords, the tenants, we all weren't ready. But we have all been kept safe by living in our residences, not worrying about it. And as we try to reopen and move forward and get COVID behind us, we're trying. The vaccination is one part that we need to address, but another conference for that, another podcast. For this one, we're addressing the rent issue. So if you have a tenant who has not paid you, you are wondering, what can I do? The courts are also closed, so you can't run to court and say evict them. And if you evict them, they leave owing you 16 months of rent, which means you're probably behind on your mortgage payments. So what do? Reach out to us. This is what this program is there for. We're going to try to work with you, give you as much advice as we can and as much guidance. And where we can't, or you need assistance with a court filing, we'll refer you to an attorney. It won't be totally free because, the Esquire comes at a big cost. But I've spoken to a couple of my colleagues and they've agreed to do subsidized. So once you've been evaluated by NHS counselors, they will be willing to take on your case at a lower fee per hour billing rate. And I'm very happy that they're willing to do that because, we don't work for free unless it's a pro bono program. And I was trying very hard to get free attorneys, but it might happen. I'll work on it. Believe me, I'll ask, I'll beg. I have no problems asking for favors from friends. And they know when I come, it's always for something for the community, for NHS client pool. That's what we do. We try to get you what you need. But if you can in any way afford to pay a small fee to help them to process your papers or give you as much guidance as they can to get your case into court, we can help you in that aspect as well.
Well, why is it needed? I'm sorry, I don't know why this program is needed. What's going on?
We have landlords who are behind on their mortgage payments, looking at $50,000. Landlords haven't worked for the past 15, 16 months. They haven't paid mortgages. They've been on forbearance on their mortgages. And they're not getting any income from the tenant. The tenant isn't paying rent unless some of these tenants are working. I have clients who tell me that the tenant is ordering from Amazon, their stuff being delivered. They go out every day like they go for a job. They're in and out the apartment. They're having, gatherings in the apartment. They're living a good life because there's some people who benefited from COVID. Believe it or not, the pandemic didn't hit everybody in the same way. Some people made good off of COVID.
Well, I hear you, and I think that this is interesting, but some people are going to criticize my office, my actions, that why are we helping these giant landlords?
They're not giant landlords. It's the 1 to 2 family. I think maybe we have a couple, 3 family dwellings in our client service area, but we don't see that. We don't see the big landlords. They don't come, the tenants don't come to NHS.
Mm-hmm. Well, isn't get ready, Jay, is
I'm ready. I'm real ready.
Isn't the government supposed to come up with money? Wasn't there money allocated to give to the tenants and therefore to the landlords? And isn't this a false issue that all the landlords have to do is just cash the check that the government gave them and the world will be a good place?
As far as I know, and I've helped a couple people through the Ewrap program so far, and this is the second program that's been there to help pay back rents. I have friends who have been landlords who haven't gotten a penny.
Is that right? Is that true, Jay? Is that true, Mr. Martin?
It's 100% true. And let me just use this to introduce myself real quick. Excuse me. It's not COVID, I promise. I got tested twice. I got a summer cold. So
there's that.
Well, Senator Sanders, thank you so much. Kimberly, it's a pleasure to be here with you, Mr. McLean. Well, my organization, we represent mostly small to medium-sized rent stabilized property owners throughout New York City, about 4,000 of them throughout Queens, mostly the outer boroughs and upper Manhattan. And, you know, I want to thank you, first of all, for having the foresight to understand that this is a problem on both ends of the spectrum of the housing spectrum. And you're going to get attacked for helping landlords. And I'm sure Kimberly has heard this before as well.
They need help. Everybody needs help.
Exactly. And the issue is we care about keeping people in their homes. And I know Senator Sanders, I know his extensive history in the community. He cares about keeping people in their homes. And at the end of the day, landlords are not looking to evict people because they want people out of their homes. They need help paying their bills. Their mortgages haven't been forgiven. Their property taxes haven't been forgiven. So the government came along with this Ewrap program. Well, the Ewrap program has been a disaster. And it's for no fault of the state government. The federal government came in with $2.4 billion. Senator Sanders and his colleagues immediately approved it, told the government in this case being Governor Cuomo, and the state government, OTDA, the Office of Temporary Disability Assistance, to set up a program. That program launched in June. Unfortunately, there was no outreach done to groups like Kimberly's or groups like mine to prep the community for the amount of money that was going to be coming into those communities. The application process has been a disaster. To date, there's only been $20 million of the $2.4 billion allocated put out the door. So I've joined with other colleagues of Senator Sanders to talk about getting this money out the door as quickly as possible. Because again, at the end of the day, it's about preventing people from losing their homes. Many landlords, especially smaller ones, as Kimberly touched on, don't have the choice not to pursue evictions. It isn't a matter of them being heartless. They have bills themselves they have to pay to keep their homes from losing them from the banks, to maintain their property taxes, to pay the water and sewer utilities. So really what's happening is these people are being forced to fight their own tenants to get the money. And the government is saying, well, you can't get the money from your tenant because the courts are closed. So that's why these programs are so important, so that we can figure out a way to get the money and resources that Senator and other elected officials have already allocated to help the program. But in the meantime, figure out ways we can help both people in this equation, being the person providing the housing and the person who needs the housing, so that they can survive until that money gets out the door. Otherwise, we're going to have people evicted. We're going to have people homeless. We're going to have people losing their homes. It's just not good for New York. And so the foresight and I really appreciate it. The bottom line is, Senator, for you to take knowing that you're probably going to be attacked for this, but having the wherewithal and the foresight to know that to really fix this issue, you have to help both sides of the equation. And many of these owners we're talking about, we're not talking about the biggest corporate owners. We don't represent them as an organization, and Kimberly isn't talking about those. We're talking about folks who bought a home as a way of building equity and wealth in their community. They wanted to live in parts of Queens that they could afford, and then they wanted to be able to pay off their mortgages, eventually own it themselves. So they rented out a portion of their home, or they knew going in that they were going to need to rent out 1 or 2 bedrooms or convert part of their homes to rental properties. There may even be people who bought it as an investment. Even still, these are folks who want to live in their communities. They want to be part of their communities. And we're making it very difficult. The current situation after COVID is making it very difficult for them to keep their heads above water. So these programs are vital. And we thank you so much for doing it.
You know what, Jay? I don't even think these people bought the houses thinking of wealth creation. They just think I'll have a roof over my head. And the way they were qualified for the mortgages was that, well, with the rental income and the bank, does their formula makes it more affordable.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, wait a minute. Shouldn't the market handle this? Shouldn't this be a correction? Why does government have to get involved in this issue? Why don't laissez-faire? Why don't we let the market decide what's going to happen here? Jay, that one is to you.
Yeah, well, I mean, the main problem with that is that we haven't built enough housing in other parts of the city where people need enough housing in some places. And then in other parts of the parts of the city, we're building too much luxury housing. So it's driving up the prices of rent. So the market isn't really accommodating the housing needs of most people. And in parts of in areas of the city where there's mostly only single family homes that need to be converted into rental properties, you have a real dearth of available housing. So the government's involvement is to make sure that the affordability doesn't spike up. In other words, that speculators and landlords who there are for every good landlord, there's a bad landlord, unfortunately. And I say this with every part of any community. We know this. Usually it's more than 1 to 1. But we know that there are people who will take advantage of those who don't have the resources. So government has a duty to protect those who can't afford, and a duty to prevent people from being displaced from financial from predatory financial rent driving up by landlords. So this is where I think it's beneficial. Also, the government, frankly, by the way, closed the courts. So if the courts were open, this wouldn't be as much of an issue. But we would also be seeing a lot of evictions proceeding, which we don't want either. So again, I think the government has a role to play.
Well, the other side of it too, though, earlier at the press conference, Senator Saunders says the courthouse can be opened because, like we're talking to each other now virtually,
Yeah.
there are means by which they can have court sessions virtually.
Yes, I'm going to look in on that to see if this is an act of government needed. Is this legislation that has to go through, or do they? Is this a question of policy where they could just implement and go on? I'm looking into that issue. But Ms. McLean, okay, you made the issue of supporting the landlord clear, then why do we have to support the tenants?
Oh no, the tenants need support as well, because there are tenants who, I remember when COVID first started and we just moved out of the office, we started working remotely, right? A person calls me and she said she just bought her house. She made one mortgage payment, her first mortgage payment, and then the shutdown happened. She was working at a hotel in New York City, and you know what happened? They were shut down. She couldn't make her mortgage payment. Her tenant too was someone who was working in the hotel industry, shut down. So there was no income coming in. So both of them have similar experiences. So that's why I say tenants need help, landlords need help. There is, billions of dollars have been put in place that we should be able to manage. Government should be able to manage something. And if they don't know, they, talk to the groups, CHIP, NHS, and others, and find out how do you see us moving this money so that the people who need to get it. Because at this point, money should not be an issue with all the allocated funds that have been out there. Landlords should be secure. Tenants likewise should be secure.
That sounds like a kind of a dreamy place, Jay. If everybody's doing well.
It's not dreamy. It's not dreamy. It can be reality, because like you said earlier, the amount of brain power that was just by the civil courthouse, we should be able to map out a path where the homeowner can get what they need to be secure, the tenant can get what they need to be secure. Because remember now, a homeowner with a mortgage is equivalent to a tenant. You have a bank as your landlord. You don't pay them, they're going to foreclose against you. A tenant has to pay the landlord or they're going to be evicted. So it's a domino effect.
And also, let's remember all this money that's allocated. This is saving the city and the state and the federal government money in the long run. That's gonna, if people end up being homeless, it costs a lot of money in supportive services to help folks once they become homeless, wraparound services. all the detrimental effects that happen to someone once they're homeless, mental health services that didn't need to be provided, temporary shelters, temporary housing that needs to be built in communities. And we know the fights that happen in those communities when you need to build more housing. So it really behooves the government to come in now and keep people homed in their homes now, help these homeowners continue to be able to provide this housing, help the tenants in some way eventually be able to pay their rent back through this billions of dollars of allocation, or else it's going to be a much more expensive disaster down the road.
Why?
Again, because once folks are homeless or they start losing their homes, there will be ancillary problems of homelessness that cost additional resources and money.
Are you speaking so strident, Mr.?
You have a crime problem too, Senator.
Say what? What was that?
I say you'll have a crime issue. You'll have a crime issue. There'll be increased theft.
Yeah.
It doesn't look good if we don't stop now. Let's not hemorrhage. Let's stop the bleed with a Band-Aid. Let's do what we need to do for the tenants. Let's do what we need to do for the landlords. Let's get people situated and housed as they were prior to COVID. And I'm happy you were able to take on this initiative.
Now, I concede that in such a saintly assemblage as we have here, the devil needs an advocate. And I am going to be the devil's advocate on this phone, on this Zoom rather. So when you hear me raise these questions, I may be doing it in a sense, tongue in cheek, because I may or may not subscribe to the question that I'm raising. I should have warned you. I told you we have fun on this show. Now, okay, Jay, why hasn't the government put all this money out? They collected on the state and federal. Why? Is that some evil plan by someone to put everybody in the street in foreclosure? What's going on?
There's some landlords who think that. I'm not one that, before I worked for CHIP, I worked in the state Senate for 12 years. So I'm not one that generally believes the government is even capable of a conspiracy to pull it off. I think it's more just incompetence, unfortunately. I think they had the money. The firm that was hired by they hired
my peers incompetent.
I'm not. No, not the Senate. I was very specific. Not the elected officials that allocated the funding, the implementation of the program. So what happened was this money came in, and everybody's not very pleased with him right now for good reason. But the governor, so we'll put the blame on him if we want to talk about incompetence. So the governor took this money, and he went to the Office of Temporary Disability Assistance, and he said, find somebody to do this program. And he found this firm that they paid $150 million to implement this program. And the implementation of the program has been a disaster. The website crashed constantly. The application process was extremely confusing. It was hard for landlords to fill out the documentation. It was hard for tenants to fill out the documentation. You had to have a specific web browser on your computer for it to even work for the first several weeks. There were thousands of applications that didn't even go through, not to mention just a consistent wrong information being provided by people on the phone bank system that they had set up. Then this last month, we started getting emails. Even after applications were fully submitted and all the paperwork was in, they were sending out emails saying, well, your landlord hasn't submitted this documentation, or the tenant hasn't submitted the documentation on the other side. And we would speak to the landlord and say, all right, did you fill this out? And they said, yes, we did. Here it is. Or we reach out on the tenant's behalf and say the same thing, both parties. And lo and behold, it was all the paperwork was in. They were just sending out emails that didn't make any sense. The entire implementation of the program has been a disaster.
Well, let's follow the money. Where is it? Where is the money?
As far as we know, it's still sitting in OTDA's coffers.
OTDA, what is that?
The Office of Temporary Disability Assistance.
All right, just wanted to we're clear here. I don't want anybody
Let's
not
keep it clear.
understanding. So if I heard you correct, the monies that have been allocated to help save people and save tenants and in effect their landlords have gone to a bureaucratic never land where nothing of real substance is being discussed. Is that what I'm hearing?
That unfortunately, that is the case. There was a lot of pressure over the last week or so. So they started getting money out. We know of people today. They said on Sunday they put out $13 million of the funds, which was out of the total 20 million that went out, which was most of it on Sunday. So we know money is now starting to trickle out. But at that rate, it'll take another 11 to 12 months for all the $2.4 billion to get out the door. And just, knowing Ms. McLean and the clients she serves and who we have to work with, another 11 to 12 months of no rent payments, no mortgage payments, no property taxes. I don't know how many people will be able to sustain another 10 to 12 months of no payments.
Well, I don't want them to go 10 to 12 months without this. However, moving this is going to be fast. Ms. McLean, what do you think about the idea of opening the courts again? These courts are, come on now, there's a lot of illness around.
Like I say, you came up with that good idea today, which I'm sure others have thought of, where they could do virtual conferencing, virtual courts. I mean, the judges, somebody must be thinking about something at this point. Because when you think about it, the staff, the attorneys can't do court stuff. So anything that's, if you're a practitioner who use the courts on a daily, and I mean, courts are advertisement as well as it's representing your client, because people sit in the courtroom and see the attorney representing their clients, they might hire them. So you have attorneys who are losing money because the courts are closed. So we have to think through this a little bit. Like, we have to look at all the moving parts when we're creating the solution. And I think that's probably where these programs or the dollars are allocated to do something, but then somebody has to kind of go through with a step-by-step guide and see how they can really make sure these dollars reach to the people who need it most.
Well, what do you recommend? How would you do it?
The virtual conferencing, virtual court. We have to realize that we might get past COVID, then there is the Delta. Then after the Delta, there will be something else. So we're going to be wearing masks. We're going to be doing vaccine for a longer time. We have to just forecast that outlook for ourselves and just focus on living like that. We have to focus on getting accustomed to Zoom. I mean, before COVID, I was no proponent, and maybe because the office was on Jamaica Avenue and 162nd, and across the street was a bank. So I would get up and walk into the Chase branch. But now that's not an option. I have to do the mobile deposits, and that's something simple. And yes, I'm young enough and I have a smartphone and I could have used my technology, but now I'm forced to teach clients how to do digital banking, because for their own safety, that's the better way to go. So it's like we have to kind of change and train. We have to go through a little retraining to make this system, the new system, the post-COVID system, we have to retrain ourselves so we can be efficient when all is said and done.
Well, speaking of efficiency, Mr. Martin, what are the arguments against going into these things that the barrister has laid out? For the status quo, what's the arguments in favor of live presenting yourself?
Well, it'll be hard for me to disagree because I agree with her. I think we should. We proposed this before, but for the sake of the exercise, being devil's advocate, some might argue that tenants don't have rights, don't have all their rights if they're being represented virtually. That because of internet access issues and others. We've heard that before, and some of the frustration from some of the tenant advocate community is that courts cannot be open unless physically people are able to go into court. But I think to Mr. McLean's point that there's enough technological solutions that we can get at to make sure that people are getting relief. The other thing I will just mention that, not to change the subject because this is very parallel, HRA, the Human Rights Organization, Housing Rights, actually, what's the
administration?
Administration for the city. Thank you for correcting me. Sometimes the acronyms, I forget what they mean. Used to has a program called One Shots, right? So when you go into court and if you're about to be evicted, be removed, you can apply for relief and the city will pay your rent, right? So we were proposing early on in this is that one way we could have gotten this relief out in a much better way is that instead of closing the court system, that every time one of these cases came to the court system, that this Ewrap money was funneled in right that way, much like the one shot deals were. That would have been a much more, to your point, an
But
efficient
question, Jay, do you think that someone has to go to court to be delinquent on rent?
Well, no, they don't.
No.
No, but to
So they probably need to change what they require based on the fact that the courts are closed. We have to everybody, there needs to be an adjustment all around.
100%.
Not just government, but even the different agencies, because if the person cannot get to court to prove that they're behind, or for the court to be threatening eviction, so to speak, then what happens to their one-shot money? Where are those funds now?
Yeah, right. So we've been told that they still have almost $200 million. The city has one-shot money that's just sitting there. And because courts are not function, they changed the rules to allow folks to apply without an active case, but no one knows about it.
Well, then
thank you for letting me know about that, because I didn't know that they were doing that.
Well, this is why we're here tonight. Now, Jay, you have to give me, that's a large statement that you just said. You'll have to give me information on that, and I will actually look into it.
Yeah.
But I didn't hear your ideas, Jay. I'm here to beg, borrow, and steal. I'm going to steal your ideas and say I did it. Now, how would you solve all of these problems?
I mean, my idea, I'm going to steal from Kimberly. We're going to use the word steal, but I think it's a good idea. I think it's an excellent idea to get virtual courts set up. If we're concerned about eviction removals, so that's the other thing. An eviction proceeding is not a removal from housing. An eviction proceeding is a legal process in which a property owner claims that they're not being paid. So it starts off with a letter that says you didn't pay me. Then it requires several steps before an actual removal. So what's been happening is everybody's saying, oh, well, I got this notice that says I'm being evicted. That you can't actually be evicted right now because of the moratorium. That's not happening. The landlord has to serve you with that document to preserve their legal rights to claim on the debt. That doesn't mean they're going to be able to remove you. So what I would say to Kimberly's excellent point was that we should open up courts, but if we want to prevent actual removals, which means not allowing marshals to evict folks, then we do a system where the Department of Health has to approve every actual removal. If we're basing it on health reasons, right?
Wait, wouldn't that slow the process down to?
Well, only on the removal part, only on the physical removal. All the other logistical
Jay,
parts of payments.
I think what you're probably trying to say is you are willing for there to be non-payment eviction actions, but not holdovers. So the non-payment actions we can do and do them virtually. So that way, that's a landlord who's willing to keep the tenant provided they pay.
provided they
The
pay.
holdover is the one where you say, listen, you gotta go. I need my space.
Right. And
And
there's certainly
those we don't really want to do right now in the interest of public health because the
correct.
virus is still increasing.
Correct. Correct. You took the words right out of my mouth.
Well,
And said it better than me.
these are interesting words. Well, that's why she stayed. That's why she stayed in school and I did not, sir. These are interesting words. Why would I mean they don't follow a holdover as somebody that we want to get rid of.
Correct.
Okay, that's double think. That's that the logic says a holdover is somebody you want to keep. There I go thinking. Well, I need to be a judge to make that work. And now, what do you think the Senate? What further actions do you think, Ms. McLean, the Senate should take on these issues?
I should give you more work to do.
Everybody else does. Why not you?
I don't think there's much more you can do as far as this issue, but because you can go to a point, like I said, with the monies, you have to peel back piece by piece as to how we can have the most impact, whether it's calling all the nonprofit groups and seeing exactly how we all think it should be. And, if we get together and we say we should be doing X, Y, or Z, then we go from there. But as far as the funds are, we just need to get those monies out. We need to find out from OTDA there are different areas that have allocated, the money has been allocated like to different villages out in Long Island where they're doing their own administration of those funds. If those groups are being more successful than the OTDA pool that's serving the city, then we need to find out what they're doing. You go to your neighbor and you copy what they're doing to see your yard look as good. We should be looking at what they're doing if the other groups are having more success and maybe use some of those tips and tools. Well,
speaking of what the others are doing, and this one is to you, Jay, I'm Sanders, of course, the senator, and I've come up with a program to make sure that small homeowners can get legal advice at free or low cost. This is the first in the nation, to my knowledge, of doing this. If it's not the first, please tell me. And if it is the first, why hasn't anyone done this for them, Jay?
Well, I think it's a great, I believe it to be the first in the city, at the very least. I don't know knowledge about the whole country, but certainly the city. And I think it's a brilliant idea. And I'll tell you why it hasn't been done is because there's this mentality that, well, let's be frank, landlords don't need help. If they can afford a house or if they can afford a building, then they're financially fine. And then that there's this perception that if you're a renter or you're a tenant, then you need the help. So much of the programs that are out there are always directed on the tenant side. When what we've discovered in actuality is that, and it's especially true for people of color who are investors or home buyers, they need legal advice that isn't being provided to them because they've been institutionally shut out of lending historically. They've been institutionally shut out of financial literacy programs historically. And so when they do enter into home buying or even landlord rental market operations, they aren't being provided with the knowledge and the legal resources that folks who have been born into an institutional investor class have. So that's what we need to start doing. If we really want, I won't get into politics too much on this, but there's a group of.
Yeah, I stay out of politics myself. Go ahead.
Yes, yeah. There's a very diverse, divisive political atmosphere right now that basically just says, anyone who has attained any wealth it's because they stole it from someone else. And so, but there's another mentality where kind of looking at it as, well, part of the promise of America is being able to come from nothing and build yourself up. So how do we find the kind of medium between those two ideologies to make sure that there are people who want to build themselves up and they're given every avenue to do so? And I think what you're doing is doing that. It's giving many property owners who need that legal advice a handout for help.
Okay, Kimberly, why hasn't anyone done this, at least locally, before? It's not that Sanders is so smart,
so Sanders know a lot of smart people. That's what it is.
Well.
And you know what it is? You respond to the needs of your constituents. They reach out to you, they explain their situation, and out of that, this program is born.
But why? You got some other electeds. I mean, you know, somewhere out there, you got to have some electeds that have been listening. Why hasn't anyone done this before for the small landlords, whether this city or any other place? I contend the first in the nation, but you know, I may have a interest.
I don't know. I don't know if it's the first in the nation. I hope you're right about that, because I like to be pioneer too. Well, but yes.
But why hasn't anyone done this to our knowledge?
I don't know.
Why, we don't like landlords, small landlords?
I just think because there's this culture that, like, even when you go to court, even with the foreclosure bit, when foreclosure first started, they expected the homeowner to be able to hire an attorney because they have a home. There's this association of being a homeowner, you're wealthy, you have money. And that is far from the truth. You have responsibility, you have big maintenance fees for your home, you have a lot of repairs, but I can't say you necessarily have money. So I think there's this misnomer that once you have a home or you own a home, you have accomplished wealth.
Well, my community in Southeast Queens is known as house rich but cash poor.
Correct.
Everything we own is in these little homes, and anything goes wrong, or we get preyed upon by predatory lending practices, and we lose the house. we lose the house, the proverbial house. What's the next thing I can do? Come on now. I'm stealing ideas, Jay. Come on, give me an idea. That way I can say it's mine.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've given you many good ideas, but let's.
Never enough, my friend. Never enough.
What can you do?
I think, you know, your continued pressure with your Senate and Senate colleagues about getting this money out the door is vital, especially now with all the extracurricular activities with the governor, that people don't get distracted, that this is a real problem that needs to keep going on.
Oh, now who's a politician? That was said so nicely, sir.
He sounds like a politician to me.
Oh my goodness, I'm glad you don't live in my district. Do you live in my district, Jay?
I don't have the privilege of living.
Because I would have voted for you, man. For me. I'm glad you don't, because that was really nicely done. And if you didn't listen, that's why you should stay awake on these programs. If you didn't listen, you wouldn't have got some fine words. And yes, it is true that government may be into a period of distraction, that the primary needs of the people may be kind of put on hold as we deal with other needs of the people. And that could hurt the little guy again if we don't watch it. But I, you know, let's be clear. That's the name of my show. Let's be clear. I get my ideas from the ground. Miss McLean is right. It's not that I'm so smart, it's that I'm listening. And I'm seeing what the people on the ground are going through, how they are faced, what they're faced with. So under those conditions, we're getting ideas from them. I got some today. The real push towards opening the courts after Zoom. Why can't we do that, Miss McLean? Why can't the courts open using Zoom? Is there some law that I am ignorant to?
Not that I know of. I personally, my family, my husband has been to traffic court in New Jersey on Zoom.
Yeah,
They mailed
Jersey
him.
will get you. Jersey will get you. Watch out for
They
Jersey.
mailed him the Zoom ID, the code, everything. And I was like, how was that? And he did it while he was on the road.
You just incidentally, did he win?
He did.
Go for it. I like it.
He's married to an attorney.
Oh, well, you know, smart by association, I always say.
He made the right choice then.
Well, obviously, clearly. So under those conditions,
So other jurisdictions
please.
are doing it. We know that it's being done elsewhere. So I think we can do it here too, and probably do it better.
Now, well, of course, we're the Empire State. We're supposed to do it better, and we're the Big Apple. We are the top of the top, if you listen to me. So under those conditions, Jay, we really need to start opening these courtrooms. I am suggesting that we begin with the judgments of pre-COVID. The ones that have already been ruled on. A judge has looked at it and ruled on it, and we should begin there. Everyone is going, whoever's going through all of their appeals, whatever the process is, we should begin there. Now, I contend that part of the reason that government has avoided doing this is because they have not wanted to put people out in danger of getting COVID-19. I would argue, now here's my case, Ms. McLean, I'm borrowing, I'm in the wrong lane, but that's all right. I'm barrister for a moment. I would argue that now that we have the vaccines, now that people can get this upon demand, the danger is far less of just throwing people out and everybody getting sick. We have the vaccines, and they minimize, if not get rid of the danger of sickness. So therefore, the premise that was undergirding not doing the moritorium has been weakened. And we should start with the people who the judgments already have been made on. I further contend not to do so can be dangerous. I heard several cases today where small landlords have been, their tenants are fighting them they have had, one guy was attacked by his landlord, his tenant, and he had the guy arrested. And this case is, these guys, he's got an order of protection against his tenant, and the tenant is still in that house. They're keeping people in dangerous situations. And that's another reason why, at a minimum, we should look in on those type of cases. We should look at who is in a dangerous situation. Just as we take domestic violence people out, we should do that. Please.
You said the vaccines are available. So yes. I have 2 little children. The older 4, one that's just turned 1. She just had her first birthday last month. They can't get the vaccine. So even though I am vaccinated, I still have to be very careful because I could bring something home to them and they're not protected. So when you go to doing evictions and moving people out of their housing, it's still risky. we have to get to a better handle on the virus. And I thought after the vaccines, and we were almost at 70%. I think we're at 68% the other day of the population being vaccinated. And look at the Delta. We haven't even opened the courts and started evicting people. We just had a second strain of this COVID virus, and we're back to where we were when we started with the first shutdown in March of 2020. So I don't think that's the way to go. Like I said, with Jay,
Yeah.
the non-payment action, we can start there, doing those virtually, and get the money into the hands of the landlord, into the hands of the homeowners, so they can pay their mortgages and manage. Some people are counting on rental income as their only source of income. Like somebody who had a second, like they paid off their mortgage. A client who has paid off their mortgage, have no mortgage, they count on that income to live because they're not even at the age to collect Social Security yet. So some people depend on the money, pay the bills in their house. They have no other income. And they're young. So you would say, oh, you can find another job, but they just feel like I have invested in an asset that's a money earning asset, and I can't collect my returns on that. And that's not fair to them either.
Right, but we know, and Ms. McLean, you know this better than I, even being an attorney who's gone through the court system, that because of the backlog, even if we were to courts open on August 31st when the moratorium ends, and we only dealt with those cases that happened before COVID, which is a much smaller group of cases than what we currently have, it's going to take 6 to 8 months, if not more, for those cases to matriculate through the court system, to go through the process of being heard, that the tenant has a right to respond to the claims, that will have an opportunity to apply for Ewrap funding, will have an opportunity. By the way, when a tenant is in court, at any point during the process, the tenant can say, I have a hardship, I'm applying for Ewrap, and that will completely stop their eviction proceeding for up to 6 months. The judge cannot act on it for 6 more months. And there are
That's why the senator is trying to help out the landlords, because
Correct.
the tenants get all the help possible. The court system supports their getting them help. The Ewrap program supports them getting help, and who helps the landlord. So he's just trying to level the playing field, make sure the scales are balancing a little better by putting his program together, because landlords really have the bad end of the stick.
100%.
Now we have to, I would agree, and now I'm going to yield to my esteemed Esquire, because she has raised some very good points, and I will not fight for a blanket everyone out, which I never would have done, but I will say that people who are in a physical, if there is some threat to harm, to life or limb, those cases have to be looked at in a different light. And I mean a verified, I don't mean a landlord or a tenant for that matter just jumps up and blames the other one. I mean, if we have far more verification, we should not keep a violent situation together. There's more of a chance of serious death or injury under those conditions. Now we have come to the end. Doesn't it move fast? We have come to the end of this show, and
I have another point. Maybe something you can do before we end.
Well, you know we're going to give you the penultimate word. Jay was about to give me. Oh, I'll tell you what. We'll let you go first, Ms. McLean. What should I do?
The Ewrap program requires that the landlord keep the tenancy going for another year. After they get the Ewrap money, they have to keep them. They cannot try to evict them for another year. I get what they're trying to get at, because then the backlog with the court system, I get that. But I think that is one reason why a lot of landlords aren't running to get the Ewrap done. Because if they were a bad tenant and they get this money and they pay them up and they're still a bad tenant, you know what I mean? So you need to carve out something in the Senate where that can be something they can litigate around.
I see. It's interesting, and threading that needle will be interesting. I will look into it though, especially in the cases I just spoke of where life and limb it may be in danger. Um, it certainly mitigating, and perhaps the landlord can get a waiver based
Right.
on mitigating factors. Now, Jay, here's your final thoughts on this issue, and you're going to give your word. Then Kimberly is going to give you the penultimate, and I will give you your benediction for the day.
Okay.
Jay, what do you think on this issue?
Well, I just want to first of all, I want to thank you for having me, and Kimberly for coming up with this program, working with the senator to implement it. It's vital. To all the points made already, we really have to make sure we're attacking this problem on both sides, not just the tenant and the property owner side. So we're appreciative of it. We do understand the obstacles you face in Albany, both political and otherwise. So we stand ready to be a partner with you and help in any way, in any implementation that you would be looking to do, and help improve both the Ewrap program, opening up the courts. Any advice we can provide from our perspective as folks who operate housing across the city would be happy to do so. So really appreciate being here, being part of the solution.
I look forward to further conversations with you guys and any ideas that you have. Madam Barrister, what do you think?
I think we need to just try this path. Like I said, reach out to the groups that have decided to handle their own funds and see what success they're getting, if they're getting any. And I hope they are, because these are like small towns and villages out on Long Island and some upstate that I know there's a need. I don't think I mentioned it tonight, but I sit on the Neighborhood Preservation Board in Albany, and the coalition comes together and we talk about issues statewide. So I know the problems are the same, maybe not as grave as a New York mortgage or rent that's been missed for 15 months, but there are people still unable to pay rent statewide. So this program, Ewrap, it's needed. The program we're doing with the landlords is needed because every so often they call us and NHS has a clinic. We've always had a monthly clinic where people call into us and explain their issues they're having. Tenants not paying, tenants aren't working, tenants are working, tenants just refusing to pay. They want them out. So the landlords have been complaining for some time. So you have really responded. And I think it's timely because here we have the Ewrap program. This is a program for the landlords, and we're happy to have it. And we're glad to be partnering with you. And we hope this program goes off well.
Well, I am grateful to NHS. I'm really grateful that there is such a pioneering group that keeps itself relevant year after year. And such a group as NHS of Jamaica that I can just bounce ideas around, and if the ideas are sound, you guys get on board immediately. So I need, as a legislator, I need a group like yourself. So I'm grateful that I have such with you and Ms. Miller and the fine organization. I also feel similar towards Chip, that we need to be able to bounce ideas around. I am one that doesn't believe in closing no doors to opposing thoughts. I think that there are no such thing as good Republican ideas or good Democratic ideas. I think they're good ideas. And we should not be frozen. We should look for the best ideas all over. And I'm bold enough to say where I got the ideas from. I think that that's a healthy thing in our society. Maybe it is not the way that the game is played today, but I'm playing tomorrow's game, and I believe in a better day tomorrow. So I'm playing tomorrow's game. So with that being said, my friends, I am glad that you both have come here, and I'm glad that this listening audience is participating in another one of my Let's Be Clear. Now, this is a controversial show. I was at a press conference this morning, a different one, where one of my podcasts came up. We were talking about vaccines and getting vaccines. And a Channel 7, as a matter of fact, said, you say that you want vaccines, but you've allowed anti-vaxxers to come on your podcast and talk. Don't you regret that? I mean, I'm glad that you're watching my show. You embarrassed me. I only thought that only 1 million people watched. But I answered them and said, of course I'm not embarrassed. I believe that we should have all kinds of people speak. You cannot, as I said to them, you can't battle a loud and screaming lie with a deafening silence. You have to say something. The truth must speak up. If you're dealing with people, if they only hear a lie, we know the danger of that. That took us to 20 million lost in World War II. You've got to combat the lies that are put out there. But you don't hide from a different side. You let them present themselves and you smash those ideas if your ideas are so good, if you got so much truth, if you're so smart and bright, then you should not fear charlatans. And I'm having a problem getting that through to some learned colleagues and learned people out there who believe that you do not allow any other side to speak except your side. That is dangerous.
It is.
It's absolutely, and it's not rational. It's foolish. I mean, I would say that there are cases where perhaps if a person is speaking of just straight out genocide and things of that nature, then maybe we should just smash that and say, no, there was a Holocaust, and we're not going to put up with people who run around trying to get the next Holocaust going. However, in most cases, I'm reminded that the jurist Oliver Wendell Holmes said that, how did he say it? He said sunlight is the best disinfectant, and we should put sunlight on things. We should have transparency and openness and honesty that we deal with people. That is our best disinfectant to charlatans and foolish ideas and madness than just putting our heads in the sand and pretending that they don't exist. So I encourage you to keep watching this show, because we tackle all of the hard stuff. And that way you can see what Channel 7 is talking about tomorrow. And my position, we're gonna give them something to talk about. Having said that, my friends, you have attended another Let's Be Clear with State Senator James Sanders Jr. I thank my guests, and I urge you to hug your children, love them, speak to our neighbors, love them, and convince them to live a better life and to stick with the oppressed. God bless you all. Take care all.